Gibbs. He's an associate professor at the University of Manitoba, and the title of his talk is Wild Bees of Manitoba, There's More Than You May Think.
Okay, I'm going to keep on the jump. Can people hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Keep on the John Cleese theme. Now for something completely different. Let's see if I can change slides. So this presentation is really just an excuse to show some pretty pictures of bees. And the project itself is really just an excuse to have an opportunity to look at a bunch of different kinds of bees. So I moved to Manitoba at the end of 2016. And since then, we've been sampling bees across the province. And we decided to compile sort of a formal checklist of all the bees present. For those who are as geographically impaired as I am, Manitoba is in the longitudinal center of Canada. It's fairly average size for a country, somewhere between Afghanistan and Somalia. It's very sparsely populated. There's about 1.4 million people in the entire province, and more than half of those are located in Winnipeg. Prairie bioregion in the south, which is mostly converted to intensive agriculture, and then lots of boreal forest and shield and some subarctic, but mostly very poorly sampled historically and also currently. This is a collaboration with a number of students: Emily Hanishuk, Reed Miller, Steve Robinson, Phoenix Nakagawa, Massimo Martini, and some collaborators: Melanie Dubois, Tom Montefurco, Corey Sheffield, and Sophie Cardinal. But I'm solely to blame for this talk, but a lot of them put in the work that I'm going to present. But like the honeybee, I'll take credit for other people's work. So basic methods is basically we went into the literature, kind of found all the published records, tried to re-examine as many of those as we could, and then used collections that COVID allowed us to access. But within the Wallace Ruffley Museum of Entomology, where I am, at the University of Manitoba, we have over 60,000 specimens. We also use the CNC and some other collections that where we knew there were bees from published lit. We report a lot of things as new, although it's kind of problematic to figure out what is actually new, because sometimes things got sort of released as in theses or as small publications, but we basically count anything since we started in 2016, 2017 as essentially new. And there was a published kind of checklist for the bees of Canada that came out in 2015. And at that time, there was about 236 species. So we're sort of running from that as sort of our baseline. And I'll spoil it. We are currently sitting at 390 species. And every time someone goes out and samples bees over the summer, we keep finding new things. So luckily, it's actually snowing today, so I'm not going to find any new bees. But we submitted this for publication, and during the revisions, I still had to add more species because we had people that were collecting. But this should be published in the Canadian Entomologist in the not too distant future. So this is about a 63.5% increase from what people knew only in 2015. It includes 6 new provincial generic records, 11 new species for Canada, and we're also proposed some sort of changes to taxonomic status of a few species, so some synonyms and resurrection as well. And we also removed some species from the fauna that were in the published literature, either because we verified those, we re-examined the specimens and they were misidentified. At this point, I'm kind of afraid to leave the house because in case I find a new species. So I'm just going to break down some of these discoveries kind of by family until I run out of time. This is one of our new Canadian records, Calliopesis australia, a very pretty little bee. We actually have 3 Calliopesis in the province now, all from different subgenera. One of my students, Steve Robertson, has been working on a revision of Pterosaurus, which is very useful because I couldn't identify any of them before he started. This is now included within a broader genus Protandrina. So if any of you have been using Pseudopronergus for a lot of these bees, you can stop now. Silas Bossart et al. And Kelly Ramos et al. Independent phylogenies have kind of shown that classification has changed. And you'll see that on Discover Life now these days. very cool little bees, mostly floral specialists in the subgenus Pterosaurus, but generally poorly known. So expect a taxonomic revision of that group in the not too distant future. The Clenidae were better known. We did find a new Calles record, Calles validus, which is an Ericaceae specialist. The Hylaeus on the bottom left is supposedly a Hylaeus mesalae cresonii, although Ryan Orem in Saskatchewan has been working on this group, and there's very likely multiple species involved in that group. We also found lots of new records of Lasioglossum, which I'm not going to bore you with, but some of the coolest were a couple of social parasites that we found, which had never been collected in the province before, and one that kind of sort of links up the geography of a species that I described from the west of North America, and another species that has been described from the east of North America, which can't really be distinguished very easily morphologically, and maybe they're actually the same species with this really wide geographic range. So that's to be determined. Lots of Sphecodes, but this is a really problematic group, and so more taxonomic work. If there's any really crazy people who want to do a PhD on Sphecodes taxonomy, you should email me. That would be a fun project. Lots of interesting megachilids, Ashmedial buchanus, which is a new genus record for the province. We also have, in 2015, there were no Dianthidium, but we have at least 3 species. We also found Anthidium manicatum for the first time in the province, which is not a great thing. And also a really interesting Coelioxys notus, which is really poorly known, only known from the male, but we think we have the female and an associated host record, because we collected it with a megachile, which had also never been collected in Canada before, which is quite cool. We found, based on 3 specimens, we found 2 species of Brachymolecta, Californica, which was a new record for the province, and then also Interrupta, which was a new record for Canada, which was very exciting. Pretty big bees, but very uncommon, only found in traps. Nomata, of course, is a very problematic group that needs a lot of taxonomic work, but we found a bunch of interesting sort of species records as well within this group. Nomata alpha, which is in the upper left, which is a species that was only known from Colorado until about 2017, but it occurs kind of up into Manitoba, northern Ontario, and northern Michigan. We also have, in the upper right is Nomata fuscicincta, which is a swank species, which we always collect with Andrena ziziae. It's a very small little Nomata. We think it's probably the host is probably Andrena ziziae. Nomata sprigera gaster, which is a very rare species in the bottom left, and then Nomata crawfordi, which is a new record for Canada, which was first collected by some random dude who was being taught how to sweep net in a canola field. Epiolines, Triapelus was never recorded for Manitoba, but there's like 8 species. And then Tom Montefurco revised the Epiolus for Canada, including one that I'm very happily named Epiolus Gibbsi, which is the one on the left. I always love these bees because they have this beautiful smiley face on the thorax. We also caught 2 species of Neolara, so we plan on resurrecting one species name for this because they're currently all considered vigilans, but when you look at them morphologically, they're really, really distinct structurally, color patterns, hair patterns, everything you can think of, they're different. And we also found multiple species of Pococytes, lots of cool little things. I think I stole that picture from Lawrence of the Neolara. Epioloides is not a new record, but this is one that we found for the first time in 95 years, I think, for the province. I tried to go back to get more samples for like genomic sequencing, and of course I couldn't find it, but we've caught multiple specimens from the same site in all years in the last 4 or 5 years, except this year. And that's host is Macropus. We only have 1 species of Macropus. People thought there was 2, but one was misidentified. And so not much new there. But just a few final thoughts. If anyone's interested in making a species checklist for a region, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, and you can learn from all the mistakes that I made. it's kind of an endless task because you can always keep adding more specimens. It's good to have sort of an endpoint and good to keep sort of good track of where all your records are coming from. And of course, all these things will change as soon as someone revises for CODIs or NOMAD or anything like that. So if there's time, I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, and I'll just leave you with some pretty pictures of bees.
Thanks, Jason. I think we have time for one question, depending on how long it is. Does anyone have any questions? You can drop it in the Q&A box or in the chat.
You're also welcome to just reach out to me anyway at any time for any reason.
Oh, there's one question. It's from Janie B, and they ask, what Macropus species?
We have Macropus nuda. There was a record of Macropus ciliata, but we re-examined it, and the actual det label actually said nuda on it. Someone just misread it at some point. But yeah, it's nuda. Thanks for your attention. I'll stop sharing.
And there's one question left, and I think we have time to answer it. It's from Melanie, and they said, do you have any collaborative sampling with First Nations communities?
No, I was in discussion with some people from Swan Lake because there was sort of a collaborative sort of pollinator group, and we were talking. We were going to initiate some conversations with them, and then COVID hit, and so we haven't done any of that since. I do collaborate a lot with Kyle Bobbywash, who's one of his students was on the paper, and he's the Indigenous scholar for our faculty, and he's got more kind of connections with Indigenous communities and more plans in that direction.